You're now live.
We are live. So we are back. And Brad, you're going to continue and walk us through one more segment of waiting versus equity payments, or
No, this
no?
No, not quite. I mean,
Okay.
I could make that about Senator McDonald's happy about that. No, I was just gonna show you the impact of using a weight for ELL versus not.
Okay.
I recognize this is not in your committee's purview, but it came up last
We
night.
should know it. If we have strong feelings, we might like to let the other committee know of our feelings.
I'll be speaking to them shortly too. So the same thing. So I sent Faith a quick chart, graph, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And what I did on this is I took the equalized pupil count by district using no ELL weight, and then I took the ELL count by district using an ELL weight. And then what I did is I looked at the percentage change. And so I used no ELL weight as the base. So that's kind of the 0% line that you're seeing. So if you're looking at something, you're seeing something that kind of looks like this, okay? And what it's showing is the swings in percentage change of equalized pupil when you apply a weight to it. And the weight we use is the recommended 2.49 weight. And what you can see is most districts go to the left. From 0, that's a negative number.
Yeah.
They're losing equalized pupil count.
Because they don't have any. Yeah.
That's right. Most of them are at the same point. It's a little over 3% because they didn't have any ELL kids whatsoever.
Right.
But the others did. There are only 7 districts that gain. Okay, and those are obviously the ones on the right. You can see that one gains all 36, 37%, something like that. That's Winooski. They have a large ELL population, and they really get a bump in their equalized pupil kids. Burlington is the next largest one. Then the other ones are going down: Colchester, South Burlington, Essex, Westford, and CVU. And then way down towards the bottom, there's one sticking out. That's Montpelier, Roxbury. They picked up equalized pupils too. If you look at that and I'm coming to Barry right now. If you look at that Montpelier, Roxbury line and go down 2, there's a small one to the left. That's Barry. Okay.
Okay.
Barry actually loses a small percentage of their equalized pupils in this. They as opposed to what they would have out.
Okay.
So this is just to get so people can get some semblance of the feel for what this weight does. It's a very large weight compared to all the other ones. And so if you recall when we were talking about how weights shift around as you have different factors, the size matters too. And this is really shifting the weights to the districts that have the most kids as a percentage of their population.
So because this is a heavy weight, the impact is large.
Yes, it's large. It's large for 2 reasons. One, because it's a heavy weight. 2, because the ELL population is so skewed, so tightly packed in such a small number of districts for large numbers.
Right.
A lot of people have 1, 2, 3, but only a few have really large numbers, and they're the ones who benefit.
They're going to get a lot.
And that's all I really wanted to show you. So.
Okay, Senator Hardy.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to emphasize something that Brad said, is that the districts that are losing equalized pupils include districts that actually have ELL students, but the weight that they get for them is offset by the fact that these 7 districts have so many more. So districts that only have even 20, 30 ELL students get no resources with this if you employ this weight, because they will lose tax capacity, they will lose equalized pupil count because the weight is so large and so skewed. So I think that's really important for people to understand, that this has a very different effect because of the concentration and the size of the weight.
Because the last time I talked to the chair of Ed, he thought his committee might be going in that direction. And
Yeah, I think
wanted to know where we were going. And I said, well, we hadn't heard from everybody, but as of last week, I thought we were kind of leaning towards waiting, but then that could change once we heard from all the impacted schools and everybody else.
No,
But
I think that our decision,
this,
the ELL thing is separate from everything
yeah,
else
it
in
is,
my mind.
but it really does. It really does. You can see where that is. Because it's like if we only had 3 poor school districts in the state. The heavy weight and could swing it a lot. Okay. Questions for Brad? Okay. Thank you, Brad.
You're very welcome. And once we get everything straightened out with the new yield runs, I'll come back with other numbers.
Okay, yeah, that would also be, I think, helpful. Just let Faith know and
Okay.
we'll get you on the agenda.
I didn't have time to make myself comfortable with it before we started talking today.
Yeah, no,
Right.
yeah, definitely want you to be there. Okay, we're going to go on with Sonia Spalding is here. Sonia's from the Barry United Barry School District. Hi, Sonia. And you had actually emailed me and, had some thoughts on the weighting versus the grants. And so I told you I'd give you a chance to talk. And then we have Mr. Strope who's coming after you. So the floor is yours. Were you able to hear some of Brad James' presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be interested. I don't know what he was talking about, what you were referring to, but I would be interested to see what that is because I'm not sure. I was trying to understand what you were talking about. So
Okay, well, this was the impact of the present weights on Barry.
right.
Okay, so I can email that to you.
That would be great.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thank you so much.
And we just need you to introduce yourself for the record. So we have a picture now, but we need a name to go with a voice in the tape.
Absolutely. So good afternoon. My name is Sonia Spalding, and I'm the chair of the Barry Unified Union School District. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you regarding the pupil weighting model versus the cost equity model. Our board is a member of the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity, which represents 11 counties, 80 cities and towns, 25 districts and supervisory unions, and over 19,000 students. The coalition includes both underweighted districts like mine and overweighted districts like our neighbors in Washington Central. Our BUUSD has over 2,300 students with between 40 and 50 ELL students and about 30% of our students living in poverty. This is roughly 700 students in our district who qualify for free and reduced hot lunch. I'm here today to advocate for the implementation of the corrected pupil weights, as I believe this to be the most equitable way to ensure and continue to ensure funding for all of our students. I believe the work of Professor Colby and her colleagues on the pupil weighting study should be recognized and implemented rather than the cost equity model, which has not been properly vetted. We should use data to inform our decisions instead of creating a new model that has not been tested. We have no idea how the cost equity model will impact our students, our schools, and our education fund in both the short and long term. The cost equity models could further widen the equity gaps in the bottom and top spending districts since it is based on an average. Our school is currently proposing a per pupil spending for FY23 at $16,252. We are one of the lowest spending districts in the state, with the state average at $18,023. Instead of every district getting what they need, which is equity, every district would get the same or an average. A dollar doesn't spend the same in every district. The cost equity model does not account for these differences in costs across districts. The weights do. And one major concern for me is cost containment. As a very low spending district, I often hear Vermonters complaining about how much it costs to educate our students and how we need to curb these out of control costs. The cost equity model will not help to control spending, but could mean that we as a state actually spend more than we need to. I'm concerned that these grants in the cost equity model will mean more spending, and then there will be more outrage and we will lose again. Our students deserve more. They deserve the stability and consistency of using the corrected pupil weights in the funding formula. While I recognize that there are concerns with how schools will spend the money and the accountability for those additional funds, I wonder where the accountability is now for the overweighted districts. Where is the concern for where their extra taxing capacity is going? More arts, after school programs, more athletics and enrichment, or more staff, more interventions, more tutors? Our students will love any one of those things and would benefit from them just as students in other wealthier districts. Why are districts with higher poverty levels and a higher number of ELL students different than the districts with lower poverty and fewer ELL students? Do we trust those overweighted districts more? I would certainly hope not, considering I represent one of the underweighted districts and serve my community with the highest standards and ethics, as I expect every other elected board member in the state to do. I have served my community on the school board for the last 11 years. Budget season is always difficult. As you may have guessed, with a large number of students living in poverty, we have a large number of our families living in poverty. We often struggle to pass budgets, with our last budget finally passing on the third round of voting. As you can probably imagine, the fluff in our budgets is non-existent. We don't have extra programs to cut or extra staff. Some members of our community are questioning why our children have such low test scores. And to be honest, I believe the main reason is that we do not spend enough on our students because our community cannot afford a tax increase. We struggle to retain quality teaching staff. We do not have an after-school program. We have limited arts and enrichment and athletics. Students have spoken to our board and asked why they can't get new textbooks and supplies. We are running a tight ship and our students are bearing the brunt of it. Our students need your help. Please recommend the implementation of the corrected pupil weights. The communities that have been underweighted for the past 20 or more years have done their best. We didn't know that the weights were incorrect. No one did. But now we do, and we can't wait anymore. We cannot wait for you to create another study or another task force. And we can't further overwhelm our schools and our business offices with a new system. We need to make this right for our students. We need to move forward with implementing the corrected student weights. Thank you again for your time.
Okay, committee. And Sonia, the numbers we just looked at in the first round with Brad would have Barry Unified losing 92 students.
Is that just for ELL or is that for poverty?
No, that's without ELL figured in. And if we went to a weight for ELL, you lose a little bit. But we haven't seen any numbers for if we went to a grant for ELL. I think that might work for you better. But I wanted the committee also to hear why I watch Barry, because I know they are a low spending town. I know they have a hard time passing budgets. This is not the first budget that's gone for more than 2 votes. Yes. And they do work very hard. So I'm watching the impact all of this will have on them. Senator Pearson.
Madam Chair, I've missed Brad's just the second part, but the example he gave us for Barry is a grant for ELL.
No, there was nothing figured in. That was just
well, on the second page there is Barry ELL grant $907,000.
Oh, that's right. Okay, let me see if I can find that. I gotta get back out of the agenda and into documents.
But your point holds overall. They lose a little. Well,
they pick up.
They do pick up actually.
145, 361 if you figure in.
Yeah, not much, but
not much, but they do pick up.
No, Chris, Senator Pearson, that's not there. There's no ELL grant on the first thing that Brad.
No,
showed.
not on the first thing.
He took out ELL altogether in the first thing, and then in his second chart, it shows that Barry would lose pupils if there was an ELL weight. They would
That was if there was an ELL weight, but on the second page of his first presentation, he did figure in a grant.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
says right there,
Oh,
ELL.
I
grant.
see, I see it.
That
I
was
see.
at the end. We were all getting
But
numb.
that gets added on top of what would happen with the weights. It's added, they benefit more from a grant than a weight.
Than
Barry
from a
does,
weight.
for ELL.
Which
They
is
get-
the recommendation, I think, that you get a grant for ELL. It has to do with how weights interact, and basically
Absolutely.
you're not rural. So you don't get any of the rural grants. And I didn't look. Let me see. if I
Well,
can see.
Now you're making me a little uncomfortable. Ms. Spalding is here very clearly asking us to implement the weights.
Right.
And Madam Chair, I just thought I heard you say that's not smart, but
No, I think it probably is. I'm just saying that it's not a huge windfall. If we go all to weights, Barry's going to lose. If we do an ELL grant, they're going to pick up a little bit. It's not big, but it's not a huge windfall for them either, the way this is set up. And the things that they didn't get anything for, a whole bunch of schools that, which is the sparsity, the rural, and the small schools. And that's, Barry isn't rural. And those rates did hit some of the more rural schools and help them along. So any other questions? Sonia, we're still working on this.
Well, I think we are probably, I've said this for many years, we're an anomaly in that we are
Yep.
Small city and a town. There's only 2 communities. It's not a lot of communities. It's just 2 of us. And we're not in, Chittenden County, where there's a lot more, where there's more diversity of population, and there may be more ELL students and that sort of thing to offset it. So we have a lot of students living in poverty, but not any of the other demographics that are going to impact the
That are
weight.
counting in. And you and I had an interesting discussion about what some of these, this is going to be any evaluation right now is on test scores. And you and I had some discussion about what your kids might need before they can even get to test scores.
Yes.
You want to just tell us what do you look at as a school board?
Well, right now, it's funny, we were just discussing our assessments, and we're not looking at obviously any of the, national assessments, SBAC or anything like that, because for the last 2 years, they have just not been very useful tools. And we'll just leave it at that because of the pandemic. So we're looking at local assessments that are being administered, I think 3 or 4 times a year. I'm trying to remember. We just had a presentation on it in our curriculum committee meeting. And we're using those as markers to be able to help us meet our students with the gaps that they're having in their learning. So.
Okay. So committee, and that might be another thing for the ed committee to look at is, did COVID impact poorer communities with fewer resources, or parents less able to take off from work to be with kids and do remote learning more than it impacted towns, families with more resources? And we might want to, as we're dispensing ARPA and other funds, we might want to look at that. Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to go on to get back to my agenda. John Stroop from Addison North. I've got my agenda back.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well done. Well done. It's John Strout.
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 Okay.
That's right.
I have massacred names worse than that.
Yeah, I think you did really well. Thank you very much. Okay, is it okay? Shall I
You
begin?
are it. Just tell us your name for the record and who you're here from.
Sure, sounds good. Well, hello, Chair Cummings. Hello, Senate Committee on Finance. Greetings from Virgins. My name is John Strout. I am the school board chair of the Addison Northwest School District. I'm also on the faculty in the education department at Champlain College, but I'm here in my capacity as a school board member and a school board chair. And I'd like to thank you for your willingness to include me today and hear my testimony about the impacts of pupil weights versus the cost equity grants. And indeed to listen to how education finance as it relates to our districts. I hope to provide some context for you as you are deliberating over these next, well, however long you're going to be deliberating. So as I've stated before in testimony, we Vermonters, we Addison Northwest School District are committed, and we are concerned that resources are equitably distributed so that student needs are met and the state of Vermont is able to provide equitable educational opportunities for all of our children. We recognize that there are communities that provide education for students with needs that are different from ours. And I think, yes, you should be considering ways to ensure that all students' needs are met, especially our English language learners and our students who live in poverty. So the short story of my testimony on the immediate question that you have before you is this. First of all, we can't afford to lose any more revenue and maintain programs for kids, especially at the high school level. So the next point is, based on our own estimates, the weights in the original weighting study, the one from December 2019, would have harmed the A&WSD, and indeed, it would have impacted all of the districts in Addison County severely by reducing our revenue. Third point is, when comparing the newly adjusted weights versus the cost equity model proposed by the task force on the implementation of the pupil weighting factors, we, the A&WSD, would recommend that you move forward with the newly adjusted weights and not the cost equity model. The new weights, as they're currently modeled, at least the ones in the reports, would not reduce our revenue to our district, whereas the cost equity model would. And then the last point is that, legislation should provide for a graduated impact over time, please. So you might be saying to yourself, and we've heard lots of testimony before that, maybe we should reduce our revenue, and maybe we're a group that should tighten our belts a little bit more, or maybe we're one of the ones that have been overweighted. And so I'd like to talk with you about why that's just not the case, and suggest to you that as you're thinking about education finance changes, that there are a great many districts like ours, districts that have seen some major decreases in student enrollment, who are relatively expensive at the per pupil level, who have really tight budgets. And yet, even though we're relatively expensive at the per pupil level, we are only able to provide limited educational offerings when compared to our neighboring districts. So I'd like to talk with you a little bit about that and share that with you. Moreover, the fragility of our system and our minimal offerings rest particularly at the high school level. It's something I hope that you will continue to consider, the financing of high school education. And there's more, because there's more freedom to cut costs that do not run afoul of the education quality standards. So I'm very concerned that as a state, we're heading down a path that puts high school education in Virgins, and indeed high school education throughout the state, in real jeopardy. So when I say we can't lose revenue, I really think that we cannot. And here's 4 pieces of evidence that I think clearly shows that the A&WSD is not overweighted. So number one, we have, since consolidation, we've seen minimal budget increases. And in the 6 years of consolidation since 2018, our total budgets have increased by less than 6%. That's like 1% year over year. And we think that in FY20, we were the only district in the entire state to cut its budget. Another point of evidence is that we've already faced and we've already made really painful cuts As schools mostly spend money on staff and staff run programs, we face the unenviable position of raising our taxes significantly, cutting programs at the high school level, or consolidating small elementary schools. And we repurposed and will likely close an elementary school, Addison Central. It was a very difficult decision and a very difficult process, but that choice kept our budgets low, and it allowed us to keep all of our current programs. So it's another piece of evidence. Evidence number 3 that we're just not overweighted is that we have limited program offerings. We did a program analysis comparing ourselves to other districts our size, Mill River, for example, Enosburg, our close neighbors like our friends in Mount Abe, and some other larger districts like CVU and Burlington. And in program area after program area, like design and technology education, like English, like social studies, we just have fewer course offerings, we have fewer pathways, and we have fewer choices in general. So there's the fourth piece of evidence about us not being overweighted is that, look, as Senator Bray and Senator Hardy know really well, we, without any incentives, without any Act 46, without any resources from the state, are exploring merger with another school district. Just last year, the boards of the ANWSD and our friends in Mount Abe voted unanimously to create a 16 VSA 706B merger study committee to analyze the advisability of forming a union school district. No incentives, no financial help, just two districts staring at the same problem, trying to see if working together will help us be able to provide good education for our students at an affordable cost. So all those together paint a picture, of our conundrum. And I'll kind of put it together in one last piece of evidence. Since consolidation, our budgets have increased by less than 6%. That's 6 years, less than 6%. But here's the kicker. In 6 years, our cost per pupil has increased by more than 15%. And so what we've seen is that some tax decreases in this last year, but that underlying dynamic of our pure per pupil cost going up over and over and over again is just unlikely to change. So all of those together, I think, are ample evidence that the financial situation in the Addison Northwest District is pretty fragile, and our outlook is uncertain. And so if we lose any, we just can't lose any more revenue. So so the short story is, if you'll please consider the impact of these weights and ensure that districts like ours do not lose more revenue than what we would expect. And in addition to the static models that you've run with some older data, consider making some longitudinal estimates and look out into the future about what declines and increases in enrollment will do with these models. I'd like to ask you to please think carefully about how we finance high school education, as I believe that that's one of our most fragile areas of our educational system. How many high schools do we need? How should we, and what exactly should those high schools be able to offer for our students? Finally, I would hope that you would please add into your conversations how these weights will impact that other major cost factor that district faces, and that is the aging buildings and maintenance of our schools and the upkeep of our buildings. And finally, please consider ways beyond these weights, such as to support education finance in the state by ensuring that tax dollars go to public schools who accept and educate all of our students, regardless of their fit with our programs. So thank you for learning a little bit more about the Addison Northwest School District. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Pearson.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. So maybe I missed this at the beginning. I'm dealing with my own elementary school kids here in the background, so forgive me. But is the under the weight analysis that sort of kicked off this discussion, is Virgins considered overweighted?
It looks like in the new model, the new weighted model, the one in the task force brought forward with the categorical aids, that we are not overweighted, or we'll see some benefit, or I think, or ultimately, but with the previous weights, we would have been hurt.
Okay.
Okay, so the most modern data, because your testimony was about proving you're not overweighted, but in fact, the latest run does not have you.
I think so.
Because I'm trying to, I would guess the most heavily overweighted school board chair in the state will come in and say rightly how it will be difficult to make cuts, and it's a very tricky problem for us, because I don't think any of us believe students are getting have excessive opportunities or program options in front of them. But when we look at it comparatively, we clearly, it doesn't seem really debated that there is something out of balance. So, all right, that was helpful. Thank you. I appreciate your passion for your work.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, because there was just confusion there. In the original study by Professor Colby, Addison Northwest would have been considered overweighted, and they would have had a significant tax capacity impact, negative tax capacity impact on the district in it. And in my mind, would have been pretty detrimental to them. Under the new revised weights from the October 28th memo, where we changed poverty measurement and where we changed the weights to all additive, and where we included a categorical aid grant for ELL, those make Addison Northwest, basically, it sort of holds them harmless. It's a little bit kind of almost equal. And that's based on projecting back to FY20. So it obviously, Professor Straup's point about modeling out into the future is a good one. We don't know what's going to happen into the future, but based on FY20, they would be about even. And I just want to say to Senator Pearson, who I know doesn't know this district as well as I do, this is not a district by any stretch of the imagination that has frivolous programs or has anything that is by any way fancy. This is a district that has a pretty basic and excellent, but basic education for its students and does not have extra programs at all. And it is not a wealthy district. And it is always a district that I was looking out for during the study of what happened to this district as a kind of bellwether district. Part of the issue for it is that it's very small. And so the impacts hit it very harshly one way or the other because of its size.
Okay, so we have two, for specific senators, bellwether districts that right now might lose, might gain a little bit. Two families move in or out. There's not a lot of movement. And I think for some places that thought they were going to get a lot, that may come as a disappointment. So, okay. Other questions at this point? I'm not seeing any. So thank you. Thank you for taking time to come and spend some time with us. There is no discussion of going back to the original. In fact, we've been told that the weights are sacred and we can't touch them. Doesn't mean we won't, but there's no really serious discussion at this point of going back to the original proposals. I think it's the real choice we're looking at now is the grants to the weights, and we're weighing those proposals. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Were you people waving, or did you want to say something? The Addison County senators were all waving their hands.
I was just saying goodbye to John.
That was goodbye. Okay.
See you in the neighborhood. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. All right, committee. I don't know if our next group is here. I see Sonia's still there. Sonia, all the Brad James documents are on the Senate Finance website under today. If you go down to documents and handouts.
Okay, I'll go look for them.
Yeah, and that may be easier than relying on my technological ability to email them.
I can find them. Thank you so much.
Okay. And then call me if you've got any questions. Okay, so committee, we're changing pace, and now I've lost everything, went away. So I'm gonna have to get back in, but we're going back to cemeteries. Wait. I got it back. Good. We're 5 or 6 minutes ahead, and I am not seeing our next group. Tucker, we're trying to get Tucker Anderson sent me an email earlier today on, apparently there is a companion bill to this one in the House, and it has taken some action. So that might, we'll hear what that is. That might make us decide, and it's in GovOps. Different parliamentarians send places, different places, but we can send out a Senate bill and they'll meet in the middle, or we can wait for that one to come. I think this will be our last day of testimony, and we're, I think, ready to vote something out. I just wanted to have a chance to hear from the treasurer's office. And then we had a couple people from Morningside Cemetery that want from Charlotte, which apparently is the association that asked to bring this to us. So I see that Peter Richardson has joined us.
Senator Cummings, this is Faith.
Yes.
I've rescheduled this group of people several times today. So
Yes.
they are all now coming at 4.
Yes, and we're 6 minutes ahead. So maybe we'll just stand at ease or do thoughts on, do we hear anything today that was an aha moment, made us on the weights versus the equity payments? Would we, who would we like to hear from? I think we're pretty close to reaching some decisions on this. Probably the heavy lift is going to be figuring out how to transition and then how to test. Or evaluate, given that schools are just in such a difficult position right now. If we use national tests, I have no idea what national tests are going to do. And if they're going about the same 4th grade standards we had 3 years ago, we might have some issues. So maybe we'll kick that one back to education, because it is kind of over our head, but the financial transition isn't. So once we get through this, we'll start on the transition section. All right, everybody's happy. Nobody wants to hear any more witnesses. We could have Brad back for another 2 hours. Walk us through more charts. Okay, let's stand at ease for, I got 4 minutes. Just shut off your video. I think we could stay live, Faith. I don't think it will take us longer to get on and off.
The treasurer is just joining us.
Okay. Tell her I just told everyone to stand at ease. Okay, now everyone is showing up. Has the treasurer is the treasurer on? No, there's the treasurer. Okay. I have an Owen Doherty showing up on my screen and not on my agenda.
Senator Owen works in the treasurer's office.
Ah, okay.
Hi there.
Hi there. So the treasurer's come with her entourage.
Yeah, Owen is replaced Ashlyn, who's been promoted to the financial policy and financial literacy, some of what Dylan did, plus a little bit of her own work.
Okay.
And Owen is recently, I think he's a couple of months in now, maybe 3, Owen, into our as executive assistant to the office. So
Okay. Well, welcome aboard, Owen. And let's see, we have stood at ease for 3 minutes because 2 minutes ago, no one was here. Or I think Mr. Richardson was here. So at 4 o'clock, we will take this back up
yeah, okay.
and go back to work.
So how have you been?
I've been good. How about you?
Pretty good, enjoying the work. Wish I saw you. It would be nice to actually be able to see folks.
Yes. Yes, our last venture at VSAC with the retreat was the only thing I've done in person in quite a while.
Me too. And if you remember, I got locked out at first. It took a little while to get in.
Yeah. Yeah, you were one of the remote.
No, I got in eventually.
That's right. You were locked out.
Yeah, I got there and the door, it was but eventually managed to get in the meeting. It's not a good sign when you're locked out of a meeting.
That's true.
There's a message there. So, hey, but
You got the message, huh?
here we go. Exactly. So, hey,
But other than being locked out, things went well.
I think it went very well. I thought it was a good meeting.
Yeah.
They do. a nice job.
Okay. I think it is 3:59, so we can start calling people back in. Get them off ease.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Representative Yantachka. I gather you're at the State House, not just the fancy wallpaper. None of us have wallpaper like that behind us. We seem to be partial to plain white walls. And the Finance Committee room has yet to get its Sistine Chapel painted. I keep getting told that there is a traditional painting that is equal to the Sistine Chapel that is going to show up on the Senate ceiling some year. I think I've been waiting 20 years and it hasn't shown up yet. But we are, according to plan, we are supposed to have beautiful ceilings. Okay, I'm going to call us back and we are live. So we can get back in. Representative Yantachka, do you just want to introduce this discussion? I've got you last, but if you've got committee to go to, I can put you on first, depending on what you want to do.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair Cummings. We are actually in House session right now.
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
in the Cedar Creek room.
I thought I
So,
recognized the paper behind
Yeah.
you.
So anyway, the bill that you are considering, S-253, has a parallel bill, H-367, in the House. And the House Government Operations Committee actually we just voted in the House to pass on second reading H-367. And
Okay.
The difference between S-253 and H-367 is that S-253 originally was referring to a section of statute, and notwithstanding that statute would include the language of S-253. What the House did was substitute the entirety of the language by putting private cemetery funds into making them work according to the same rules as municipal cemeteries.
Okay,
So I think it's a more elegant solution, but it achieves the same thing.
okay. All right.
And I could read you the text of the bill as
No,
it was.
well, I think we'll, once it's out, we can put it up and look at it. We've got Tucker Anderson sent me, I assume most of the committee, an email today just updating us on what was going on, and I was gonna have him walk us through it. I think the first thing we wanted to do was to hear from before we did anything, we wanted to hear from the treasurer's office on the wisdom of doing anything to loosen up the rules. And then, but it sounds like there may be we all want to do the same thing, and there just may be a more elegant way of drafting it rather than overriding is just include in rather than notwithstanding. Okay.
And if I may add that the addressed by Mr. Richardson, who is also on your
He's here.
witness list.
Yeah.
He hasn't done so already.
No, we're just starting up. So thank you. Go back and legislate.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see Tucker here, so but I want to go. I'm going to go to the treasurer and then to Mr. Richardson, and then we can take some time with Tucker and he can walk us through all the drafting technicalities. But I think in order to allow any group to change its investment policy, I want to hear from the treasurer. So Treasurer Pierce, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm very pleased that you brought us into the conversation, and we will try to be helpful. I'm still catching up a little bit on the subtleties of the statutes with respect to cemeteries, both town-owned cemeteries and cemetery associations that I've seen. So please forgive me if I'm not exactly on point, and I will attempt to rectify that as we speak.
That's okay. I'm getting feedback from somewhere. I think, yeah, you can try, Beth, if you talk closer.
Sure.
I'm not seeing anybody's screen light up, so I can't blame anyone.
All right. So is that a little better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have to work on the volume on this laptop, but we'll figure it out. So, hey.
Okay. No, it's better.
Got it. So I took a look at and had one of our folks in the office, our counsel, take a look at the chapters on cemeteries, Title 18. We looked at the general provisions, the town cemetery associations, and work our way through. And the investment rules are set out in Section 5309. And they're very prescriptive. I would agree with that from the onset, and they are antiquated. I read the memo that you folks sent along, and I just want to say thank you for sending that to us. And I think that was helpful. Frankly, it is correct that it is very antiquated. There's also a separate chapter, which I think this is getting to the point that we heard from the House side, which is Section 5384, which authorizes town treasurers to invest in certain accounts in securities. And again, it's very prescriptive. It seems somewhat different. They both are old. They both reference the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation, which was dissolved, I believe, in 1988 and taken over by the FDIC in 1989. It's interesting that the 5384 also includes a reference to the Uniform Prudent Management of an Institutional Funds, which is essentially the prudent investor law, and that was updated and essentially removed and replaced by the current statute in 2009. And 5384 makes reference to it, which would lead me to believe that that there was a review of 5384 in 09, but it did not take care of the issues with the FSLIC and other things. I think my comments would be that I do think that that it's too prescriptive in both cases. I think that we need to take a look at ways to set some to give it some a little bit more wide room, but I wouldn't say complete wide room, not wild wide. And in 5384, it does reference. That is
Madam
me, isn't it?
Chair,
Beth, we are getting a lot of feedback.
I think
Okay.
it's Senator McDonald because the House chamber is in session and we're
Ah.
hearing that. So Mark, can you mute?
That sounds much better.
It does.
The house
does.
is full. Okay.
Okay. I like the reasoning behind all this when you go from House to Senate. But in any event, 5384, the section for treasurers to invest does, as I say, make reference to the Prudent Investor Act. And I think that that's something that isn't in, as far as I could see, the 5309 section that you're looking at. I think that I'm a little on the same wavelength as the House, in as much as that they should be in sync to each other to some extent. And yes, you can make the case that the cemetery associations are bodies, as if I read the definition correctly, that were formed. I don't remember the date, after 1933 or something in that area, that are not town owned and not religious or the like, and so they're essentially incorporated groups. I wouldn't give it just free, do whatever your board has for a policy. I think that it does need to be more flexible. I would agree entirely with that interpretation. But I think that if I'm correct, and folks that are more familiar with municipalities and the operation of cemeteries may have more insight. But I believe that the current statute permits the towns to make appropriations to the cemetery associations, and to the extent they do that, those are public funds. Was somebody responding to that?
No, I'm getting some more feedback. Senator McDonald is muted, so we can't
Okay.
blame him at this point.
Okay.
Just it's the glories of Zoom.
Okay. So what I would say there is, in as much as they are taking in public funds for cemetery associations for cemeteries in a town, subject to town appropriation, that we might want to make sure that we have some guardrails in there that, but certainly more flexible, and I would say certainly a reference to the fiduciary responsibilities and the Uniform Investor Act. When you look at the state, we actually have guidelines too. We have some wide room, but we also have state statutes that deal with the way we can invest monies. This is Title 32. So Section 433 is investment of state money, and that's essentially operating monies, and they're essentially money market instruments. We're not able to invest our operating cash in things such as equities, for instance, or things that you might see in a pension fund, and that makes sense because these are monies that are immediately available for appropriation. There is a separate fund we refer to as a trust investment fund, and that's under section 434, and that provides a lot of room. It says it can be invested similar to pension funds. Now, we would never go that far. This includes a higher education trust. It does, I believe, include some cemetery fund. I'd have to go back and look at it, as well as some others. And it's 50-50. It's about 50 in bonds and 50 in a variety of different equity types, global, emerging markets, and the like. It did very well last year. It had 14.9%, and it will go up and down, as you might imagine, with markets, but it's done well over the time. And again, that's where the higher education trust funds monies reside, and we're able to send out money each year for VSAC, UVM, and the state colleges to provide post-secondary scholarships, education scholarships. So I would recommend that we kind of get rid of the antiquated language, make sure that we include the fiduciary responsibilities, the Uniform Investment Act. But I wouldn't just say whatever the board policy is and give it that much reign. In as much, and again, if I am wrong, please correct me. Again, this is not my the structure of cemetery operations is not something that I generally deal with, but I believe a town can appropriate funds to a cemetery association. And again, I would want to make sure that public funds are appropriately invested.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you. And again, the language in both of these places, 5384 and 5309, are massively antiquated and need cleanup nonetheless.
Okay, it's been suggested that we might do the same parameters that we did for town cemeteries.
Yep.
I think last year, and that must have gone through GovOps. Why we got this one, I guess it is the parliamentarians' call. It's in GovOps in the House. Maybe because this is private investment and town cemeteries are cities and towns. But apparently we did make changes to the town cemetery investment rules. And if we'll take a look at them, if they're what you need them to be, it sounds like it would be a good idea to have everybody have the same rules and regulations. So
yeah, I think that to some extent you could make a case that there should be some variations, but again, I don't know to the extent. I think I would want to know to the extent that these associations receive public funds.
okay.
When I look at the 53 town cemeteries, 5384 right now, it what's on the online on the Vermont statutes does need cleanup, and I have not looked at the H367, I believe you said, and see whether that cleans it up. But
Okay.
it definitely has the same type of language on the savings and loans, which are a completely different animal. After I think 1/3 of them failed in the savings and loan crisis in the 80s, and that this is and it references as I said, a body that's now defunct and been replaced by the FDIC. So there's definitely language changes that need to be there. And I will look at 367 to see what it looks like.
Okay, good. And just email us if you have, you want to come back if you have any concerns. Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you for your time. Committee, any questions for Treasurer Pierce? Okay, then we're going to move on to Peter Richardson from the Morningside Cemetery Association. So welcome, Mr. Richardson, who just dropped from one corner of my screen to the other.
So long as I don't go out the back door.
Oh, Zoom is lots of fun. We ask you to introduce yourself for the record and tell us who you're representing.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I'm going to turn a light on. So I'm not leaving. I'm just turning a light on.
Okay. Is my sound coming through okay?
It's perfect.
Okay. Thank you for having me, and hello, Treasurer Pierce. I appreciate that you are obviously deep into this topic, and unless you're gone, I won't extend my appreciation too long. And thanks as well to Senator Ram Hinsdale, who's been a champion for us in getting involved in this and promoting it and helping us understand what the Senate process is, as well, Mike Antachka. My name is Peter Richardson. I am serving now as treasurer of the cemetery, the Morningside Cemetery Association in East Charlotte, and have been doing that for several years now. My wife, Nancy, has been president of the Board of Trustees since 2016. The association is a private nonprofit and took ownership of the town cemetery in East Charlotte more than 100 years ago, and has been managing and maintaining it since then. It's a wonderful place. We got involved because it's this sparkling jewel at the end of a dirt road, and we said, wow, this warrants our attention. My testimony had step-by-step discredited the existing statute. I will not go through that. If everybody is comfortable, as Treasurer Pierce was stating, that it needs to get fixed. It's antiquated, it's contradictory, it's poor policy, and it's been sitting there looking bad for 43 years now. I can go through that again, Madam Chair, if you'd like me to, or just let it sit.
I think we've got the message that, yeah, holding
Good.
to agencies and references that no longer exist needs to be fixed.
Okay.
So perhaps you can tell us what the impact is on you, on your organization.
The impact of the existing law is that it's cost us a lot of money. Effectively, it has required that 2/3 of the reserve funds, the so-called perpetual care fund, gets invested in municipal bonds or treasuries. And as we all know, the yield on those investments is minuscule, doesn't even keep up with inflation, hasn't for some time. 1/3 of the funds can be invested based on the statute in prudent corporate stocks and in the stock market. The experience that the latest bull market has provided has been very bullish on the latter, and that's why I say it's cost us money, because it has not generated any income. What we have proposed, and the bills are the same as presented to the House and the Senate, is that the existing law be repealed and that it be replaced with a short, punchy law that compels cemetery associations to do 4 things. The first is that they think through and establish investment policies. This has not been done. We have not done, well, we actually have done that because we have been assisted by a fiduciary since we hired them almost 2 years ago. So that's step number 1. That step number 2 is that the policies specify investment objectives, and this can all be exposed publicly. And we make reports annually to our town clerk, and so that can be accomplished. So this is, and we have absolutely no incentive. I'm sorry. Yes.
No, basics. This is a private cemetery.
That's
run
correct.
By a private association. Is it still an active cemetery? Are people still being buried there?
That's correct. It is. Okay,
so this is not like some of the cemeteries around here that are full and have been closed. So this is still an active cemetery. Does it function as the town cemetery, or does the town have another cemetery?
The town has other cemeteries. There's only one other in town that we're aware has any room.
Okay,
And that's
So-
in a churchyard.
okay, but that would be a church, a religious cemetery.
Yeah, I'm not certain of what I just said, but I believe that there is no public town cemetery that continues to have space.
Okay, so you are functioning by and large as the town cemetery.
The extent to which there is also a provision in our bylaws that say the only people who can become permanent residents there need to be, quote, Charlotters. And we've struggled some with how to define that, but that's the case. So
Okay.
we don't reach out and say we are the town cemetery being
Right.
operated by a nonprofit, but de facto, perhaps that's how it's
You're
conceived.
the only one in town.
So what fine, I can go on with that if you'd like.
No,
Just-
I think, no, that was just when I'd heard and Jim at the end of a dirt road, I had in my mind an older cemetery that was closed, more of an historic. And
It is,
isn't.
if I can, it is an historic cemetery. It began accepting people in 1798.
Right,
So
but you
it's
are
been-
still collecting perpetual care funds. You are still selling plots.
We're still selling plots. The perpetual care fund that has accumulated has been the consequence of prudent investments.
Yeah, okay,
Unfortunately, those investments prior to the time that we got involved didn't follow the state law.
okay. Yeah, I'm not
So-
surprised.
I mean, I have no insight into that, and I'm not trying to accuse our predecessors of doing
No.
anything because we were innocent of that law as well.
I'm just assuming that a lot of people are, so.
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
that's what we say. We say we need to, those policies need to direct the associations to prudent investment, and that the associations are encouraged to engage fiduciary, competent analysis.
Okay, that was the word that, do you get any money, or can the town allocate money to you?
They could, we've never requested it,
Okay,
and we don't intend to.
all right, well, that was just you aren't the only one, so that was the treasurer's question, was if you could receive public money. She wanted to make sure that the appropriate fiduciary safeguards were
Yeah.
there. Okay,
I understand that, and I'm sure that that's an understandable expectation.
okay. Okay, good. So what would you suggest that we change the law to?
Well, we have proposed our suggestion, but that's not an ironclad requirement. What happened in the House was interesting for us. It was a finesse around some other references to some other existing statutes that we'd never heard of that seemed to make sense. So we had proposed in these two different bills the same solution. If there is a way to get at that solution through some other means, we're fine with that. We did not see anything in those references to existing statutes and paragraphs and so forth that was anything but complimentary.
Okay. Committee questions. If not, I'm gonna see if Tucker will join us and see if he can tell us. Okay. This bill only deals with association cemeteries, and there's two sections that the treasurer said needed to be updated tell us, that refer to things that haven't been around for 40 years. So kind of walk us through and let us know what the House did that's different, because this bill basically just expands what a cemetery association can invest in. Is that right?
Is that a question for me?
No, I'm looking at my lawyer here.
I'm sorry.
That is correct. So S253 as introduced contains the same language as H367 is introduced in the House, which essentially would allow cemetery associations to invest in anything that complied with a investment policy adopted by the cemetery association and provided that it was prudent to do so. What has happened in the House with H367 is that the House Government Operations Committee looked at work that they did just 4 years ago, 2018, for town cemeteries. And what happened there was that you all amended 18 VSA section 5384, which governs specifically the types of investments that town cemeteries are allowed to make with their perpetual care funds. That discussion 4 years ago was much longer and much more complicated than the more recent discussions. And essentially the basis for a lot of that discussion was whose money is this that's being invested? And the legal answer is this is a trust. So it doesn't belong to these legislative bodies that oversee the cemeteries. It doesn't belong to the Cemetery Association. Those are the managers of the trust. And the funds are given to them by eventually the beneficiaries, those who are interred in the cemeteries perpetually, the perpetual care funds. Acknowledging that the work that you all did 4 years ago went through 5384 and expanded the list of available investment opportunities to town cemeteries, expanded the list to include, for example, mutual funds, unit end investment funds, a greater opportunity for investment in stocks, ETFs. So as was pointed out earlier, currently section 5309 that binds the cemetery associations only allows them to invest 35% of the trust funds in stocks, essentially. The other big component beyond expanding the list of investments for town cemeteries was that 5384 was amended to allow the cemetery commissioners to delegate the management of the funds to a professional fund manager according to the Uniform Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act, which is what the treasurer brought up
Which
earlier.
is what the treasurer wants, especially if they can receive public monies. Brookside may not have done it yet, but they aren't the only ones. So if she wanted to make sure that there were appropriate fiduciary guardrails on that. You think that would do it?
The House bill does connect directly and states expressly that cemetery associations have the authority, at least as H367 has moved forward from second reading, to delegate management to an UP-MIFA appropriate investment manager, Uniform Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act.
Okay, MIFA, okay. Learn something every day. Okay. If the Cemetery Association keeps their investments in-house, they don't hire a manager. They have managed this fund for years and they're going to continue to manage it. If they do that, are they required to follow the same UP-MIFA standards?
So the best way that I can describe this is that the investment statutes are almost like nesting dolls. So at the core, you have the most restrictive aspects. So for cemetery associations, that's going to be section 5309. And then you have layers outside of those very specific restrictions that overlap and either bind certain actions or permit certain actions. The Uniform Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act is the top layer. It is going to overlap whatever investment statutes you apply to
Okay,
the
so
cemetery.
everybody has to go up, is under the auspices of the big Kachina doll.
Right.
And all
that
the
is-
other little ones are nested underneath. Okay, so they're all required to go by that standard. We'll call her up MIFA.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so what the House has done today is put private cemetery associations under the same guidelines as town cemetery associations, which did away with having to do away with and then replay. It was simpler if I was understanding Representative Yantachka. Is that basically what they did? So everybody's playing by the same rules.
Yes. They would
Okay.
all operate under one statute, 18 VSA section 5384.
Okay.
And I will admit, when work was done on it in 2018, I don't remember anyone pointing out that the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation was dissolved in 1989, 30 years before the work was done on this section. But
So are we fixing that too? And there's apparently an outdated reference to a federal insurance program that's been taken over by the FDIC. Can you make sure that we reference regulations and programs that are presently in effect before we vote this out?
H367, as amended just today, does not address any of those issues. So I was not aware of them until
Okay.
I showed
Well,
up.
can you take a look and see if you can update them for us? And then maybe you could tell them they might like to make an amendment before third reading if you can do it in time. But if you can do that, you don't want to have a statute making reference to things that are gone, long gone. So we'll keep you from having to spend a summer updating this statute, and we'll see if we can update it as we go through. Okay, committee. Questions? No. Okay, Senator Bray.
So with these nesting dolls, I just want to make sure I have the metaphor right here. Is it that you started in the most innermost was this very restrictive provision, but does every provision and the layers after the bigger dolls that come outside it apply? So it's like the superset of every one of those, or does the outermost one control them all? It sort of notwithstands what's inside it. I wasn't sure how it's to be interpreted.
The innermost doll is the ring of power that controls them all. And where the innermost doll is silent, then you have the layers around it, with the top layer being the Uniform Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act, which is also the most general. It doesn't have a enumerated list of prohibitions for investments. It is essentially a guidance statute about prudent and appropriate investment of institutional funds.
Hey, one ring to rule them all. Now I got it. That's very helpful.
Okay. So committee, any other questions? I'm thinking we might, if Tucker can clean up those other little issues with things that no longer exist, we can either vote this out and send it to the House, or we can sit and wait for the House to send theirs to us. Theirs might go to GovOps. The last one did, but that was municipal cemeteries. This is kind of, there was a judgment call. It had to do with investments, so we got it. But it could just as easily go to GovOps. So what is your pleasure, Senator Pearson?
Well, I guess maybe I missed it from Tucker, but why wouldn't we just vote this out and have the House, unless we understand the House to be momentarily voting? It seems like we could help.
They
both
are.
sides.
They
are about
they voted second reading today.
Oh, well, then I take it back. We should just wait and we can tweak their language.
But we probably need to amend. So let's have Tucker. We'll take a look at the bill as it comes out of the House. And Tucker, if you can't get them in time to make an amendment on the floor, we can amend it to do away with all those references to non-existent entities. Okay. And Treasurer Pierce, you've rejoined us. I guess the decision is that the House has put association cemeteries under the same restrictions that we put town cemeteries under. But nobody caught all those non-existent references. So we're going to clean those up. If you see anything else that needs to be polished a little bit, let us know.
I appreciate that. As far as I know, our staff did not opine on the list on the House version, and I'm not sure who looked at it in 2018. I can't imagine that one of our investment staff wouldn't have picked up on the on that defunct organization. So I'd like to take a minute, if you're going to amend it on this side, I'd like to have one of our folks look to make sure that there isn't another red flag. And frankly, I would recommend when you're looking at something like this, you should probably have someone who in our investment staff take a look at it, whether it's our investment staff or whether it's the VPIC staff, which is separate or will be separate. Unfortunately, when the pension reform bill was done, they didn't give them a budget, so there's still ours for the moment. But
still there. Okay, yeah, I think very much. I mean, if we're going to do this, we might as well clean it all up. Yeah. So if your staff will take a look at it, there's an outside chance Tucker might get somebody to draft an amendment, but it's going to come to us and we can send it back with a proposal of amendment. If you find something that needs to be tidied beyond non-existent references. Okay.
We'll take a look.
Okay, good. Committee, does that work? Always come up after you've done 2 hours on weights and school funding. Okay, I think we have put in a full day. Tomorrow we're going back. Graham's got some corporate income tax stuff. And then Commissioner Bolio is going to talk to us on the corporate minimum tax. And then we're going back
Cummings,
to.
You're looking at Friday. Tomorrow is.
Oh, I'm looking at Friday. I'm down too far. All right. That's right. We're going back and have fun with timeshares and genetic information use in insurance. And we've gotten quite a bit of requests to testify on both of those. So tomorrow will also be a full day. So we can go off live.